organizing this event. That's the LUNk Collective. We have a house over on 12th and Charleston. It's just north of 12th and Charleston, where we host weekly events, movie showings and meetings, kind of a place for any progressive group in town to gather and get together, organize. So a little bit about us and what we stand for. We're a collective, which means we're basically a group of individuals that, despite whatever differences we have, we do share one common ideal, and that's the ideal of a more ethical society. Basically, in short, a society based on equality, liberty, direct democracy, and of common ownership and common control of resources and production. And after saying those platitudes, I think I should clarify what I mean by that. When I say democracy, I'm not just talking about voting for someone on TV who you think looks good to represent you. I'm talking about us, the people that are actually affected by the decisions, being the ones that make those decisions. And when I'm talking about common ownership and common control, I don't mean by the state, I don't mean nationalization. We mean the people, the community actually owning and democratically controlling resources and production. If history tells us anything, it's that change comes from the masses. It comes from us, from the people, the working class people. And this is why we celebrate May Day. May Day is our holiday. It's a holiday for the working class. It's for all of us who must sell our mental and physical labor to an employer to survive. And it's for those of us who can't find employment, and those of us who refuse to sell ourselves and do whatever we can to get by. So today's our day to stand up, and we want to reclaim this holiday. This was the first Labor Day, the true Labor Day, which was, Jackson's going to talk about how the U.S. government changed today into Loyalty Day. I don't think anyone here celebrates Loyalty Day. But we're going to have a series of speakers, and it's just going to be kind of short. Afterward, we're going to have a party at the LUNk House, and everyone here is invited. We'll give you more details on that after the march. But up first, we're going to have Jackson Meredith, who's a personal friend of mine. He's also a co-founder of the LUNk Collective, and he's going to talk about the history of May Day, of Labor Day, International Labor Day. So everybody please welcome Jackson.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you for coming out on this wonderful, beautiful, warm day to join us in reclaiming May Day for the working class. This is the rightful Labor Day in most of the world. And it used to be here too. You know, it wasn't always this way. You know, the first global May Day was back in 1886, and there were protests all over the United States, as there were all over the world. Now, the hotbed of those protests in particular was in Chicago, where there was a 3-day general strike. Now, in those days, you know, labor organizing and strikes were very dangerous business, and you typically got policemen's clubs over your heads and revolvers in your chest for your trouble. And during this 3-day general strike, that was no exception. On May 4th, there was an additional protest call to protest police brutality against the general strike. And it was called in Haymarket Square. And once again, the police came out, and they came out to disperse the protest. And something different happened that time. An unknown assailant threw a bomb at the police and ignited a massive riot between the workers and the police. An unknown number of workers were killed, and as were 8 policemen. Now, most of the policemen shot each other with their revolvers in the chaos of this protest. Now, that the bomber was never found, but the authorities used the Haymarket incident as a pretext to round up the 8 anarchist leaders of the radical labor movement in Chicago and put them on a show trial. Now, this was a mockery of justice. This trial was a joke. These guys were openly tried for their beliefs rather than any direct, plausible involvement in the bombing itself. And that didn't stop all 8 of them from being convicted. 4 of the 8 were executed by the state, and a 5th committed suicide in his prison cell to avoid his execution date. The other 3 only served long prison terms. Now, these men were executed despite massive international outrage, which proceeded to radicalize an entire new generation of activists, including Emma Goldman. And it also inspired the people who organized the first May Day protests to make it an annual protest. May Day is an annual holiday in the world today because of the sacrifice of the Haymarket martyrs as we know them today. But that didn't happen here, and there's no surprise there that our corporations and their pet government maybe wouldn't want to celebrate Labor Day on May 1st with the rest of the world, especially since it was in honor of 8 of our own political prisoners. Yeah, and you may realize we have the Labor Day in September, which was chosen by then President Cleveland specifically to keep labor organizing as far away from May 1st and the Haymarket memory and the memories of the Haymarket as much as possible. And as Brian also noted, we got further removed from the traditions of May Day in this country under President Eisenhower during the Cold War, when he declared that May 1st be Loyalty Day. Loyalty Day. But I want to go back to the original May Day of 1886 for a minute. Now, the main thing that brought people together all over the world on that day was the pursuit of the 8-hour workday. For the 8-hour workday and the 40-hour work week, if you want to look at it that way. Now, it was customary for the working class at that time to work at least 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes more. And still, I mean, basically starvation at starvation wages. Now, this struggle was eventually won many years later, but we've also seen this struggle sort of taken away from us over the last 4 decades. You know, since 1970, wages in this country have stagnated. Many workers are making the same wage their father earned 40 years ago, but obviously the cost of living has gone up quite a bit. What has that meant? That has meant that workers must now work second, often third jobs just to pay their bills. I mean, the 40-hour work week still exists in legal books somewhere, but it's not real to many in the working class anymore. I bring this up because I think the real culprit that we need to keep in mind here is reformism. This capitalist system cannot be reformed into something more humane. This is a system of wage slavery, and yet our movement is dominated by people who think we should just vote Democrat and hope for the best. You know, there was I want to close on this note here. There was a protest in the UK in 1981, and at a dull moment, a reformist socialist took the stage and started saying the usual things, rah-rah, minimum wage, you know, worker reform, so on and so forth. And a group of anarchist hecklers started a counter chant. They started chanting, bigger cages, longer chains. Bigger cages, longer chains. Where is that outrage in our movement today? I say we need a new game. No more we don't want bigger cages. We won't settle for longer chains. We need a new system. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackson. Up next, we have John Krushmar. He's the director of the William Brennan Labor Institute. He's a former member of the United Auto Workers. He has over 30 years of union organizing experience. Please welcome John.
It's been a long time since I've been at a May Day rally. Thank you for the invitation. Let me be the old fat white guy from Omaha. For 30 years, I've been working with the women and men of organized labor in the state of Nebraska to help them be the best they can be in their capacities as leaders and activists in their local unions. It is a wonderful job, and I hope I can do it for another 30, although I will be testing some unknown territory if that happens. The history of the United States since its founding has been the story of expanding civic, civil, and human rights. There are two contrasting views about whether rights should be expanded or not. The first is the view of those who were previously without them. They tend to find the idea rather popular and indeed consistent with the founding